Okay, welcome. Kihon Miller here from Warrior Concepts. This is our weekly Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday, and so we're just going to jump right into things today. So today we're going to take a look at emotional response and what that means with this whole idea of total training. Now, when I say total training, what I'm talking about is everything from training with as many parts of us, right? As many, I often say cylinders firing, for those of you who understand the automotive engine kind of analogy, but thought, word, deed. Obviously, we're working on physical techniques and things like that, but a fight, a conflict, isn't just limited to that. So today we're going to take a look at integrating the emotions into the training paradigm itself. Okay, because while lots of folks would like to believe that they are logical, rational creatures that happen to have emotions, science would actually show that we are emotional creatures that use logic and rationale to make the emotions make sense, right? So anyway, so this is a really important part of everything. And so what we're going to be doing is adding what I see as a commonly ignored aspect of life, right, to our training that without this thing can leave us completely unprepared for the reality, right, of a real world self-defense situation. Okay, so when I say that, when I'm talking about the emotions, right? When I say that, I can already hear some people saying, well, that's BS, Sensei. Everyone applies emotion to their martial arts or their self-defense training, especially in like sparring or in a real fight. But let me ask you a question: which emotion? Okay, which emotion? Okay, because the problem that I see is that most people think that there's only one that you need to worry about, and that's call it anger, call it rage, some form of aggression or aggressiveness, right? That get in there, beat the shit out of them, that kind of thing, right? What we call fire, right? It's just one of these old code words. But again, people are looking at it from this idea of commitment to get in there, get him first, hit him as many times as you possibly can, beat the crap out of him, that kind of thing, right? And while that's certainly one way to do it, right? One way to go about it, one emotion. But what happens when? Well, actually, that's what happens when we're only thinking from a fighter's perspective. Okay, so got a bunch of notes here for you. Just want to make sure that I cover everything. So let me borrow. Well, it's not just one story. This is kind of this story, or this way of highlighting this is really from a bunch of experiences that I've had in life. Okay, whether I was a military cop or I was private security or just out in the world seeing stuff, or knowing certain martial artists. Right, read the letters to the editor section in Black Belt magazine. Right, and every couple of issues that come out, right? You get this letter that comes in, and usually people depersonalize because they don't want to admit to failure, right? It's just the way ego works. But what you get is this letter that, like, my friend studied their entire life, multiple level black belt, whatever, and they got their asses handed to them by this guy on the street, or they were attacked. This was not a fair fight. They were attacked, and like they didn't fare out well. So what gives? Okay. But I've seen my fair share of situations where a fighter, right, who was really good at using that approach, or a martial artist, or somebody who's been in self-defense training for a long time, and in the dojo, things are working, like gangbusters. Everything's working really well, and then all of a sudden, right, they find themselves in a situation where they are way over their head. They find themselves in a real attack scenario, right? Nothing like what this person, right? They're different people, but nothing like what they were used to, right? When he and some other, bull, right, got into it, bar on Friday night or whatever. Everything can seem like it's the same, or there's one right way to go about doing things. When, and this is especially when we have experience, right? When all the experiences are very similar, right? If you go to any of my videos, get past the fat old bald guy jokes and Santa and all that kind of crap, right? And you'll and the common theme is that won't work at a fight. That won't work for real. That's not the way fights happen. I can't remember a time that I or the other guy I grabbed somebody else, or they grabbed me, or all kinds of things, right? And it's just because their experiences are just duplicated over and over again, because they're in the same kind of scenario, or they're in the same kind of uh, locations, right? Bars or whatever, right? And they're around the same kind of people, and or they're engaged in, everybody tends to think the same, right? This group think kind of idea. It happens in the martial arts as well. And when that happens, we can come to believe that that's the way it always happens. That's the only right way to do things. Okay, when in reality, when I say attacker and when I say self-defense, I'm not talking about, he bumped into me, I bumped into him, or for whatever reason we took this shit out to the parking lot or whatever, and so we've both agreed to be there. I'm talking about bad situations where you didn't choose to be there. Okay, well balanced, normal, high functioning, successful family men, or people could be single, right? Moms, dads, men, women, whatever, single, married, but they've got something to lose. They've built a life and whatnot. They don't go around getting into bullshit like that, right? So they're typically not looking for, uh, you know, notches in their belt because I won that fight or whatever. They're doing everything they can to avoid it, right? But when an attack comes, it's right. This person doesn't look at you from across the street and go, I think that'd be a fair fight. Let me go jump that person. It's not that kind of idea, right? Self-defense comes with all kinds of variables and whatnot. Everything from, they're bigger, stronger, faster. They've got two friends sitting over on the bar stools, just in case things don't go well, right? All the way to, this guy's just a fucking killer, right? I just saw a video not too long ago where this happened. Where was it? California. And these three employees left their workplace and were on a lunch break, and were walking down the sidewalk, and this jackwagon with a freaking axe, right, starts charging at them. Now they could outrun them, right? That great. Okay, called the cops. Cops didn't do anything. As an ex-cop, I can't speak for whoever's doing whatever, but I do know that often, right, if everybody's busy, nobody's showing up for that particular case. But either way, this guy couldn't catch them, but later, within an hour or two, he had hacked two other people on the street. Right, so it doesn't get you, he'll eventually get somebody else. Okay, so are we training to defend against somebody with an axe? Okay, I hope so, because, or it's just pretty much the same as if they have a sledgehammer, baseball bat, that kind of thing. It's a heavily weighted club kind of item, right? So it doesn't have to be specifically an axe, but we should kind of understand how that kind of thing works. Either way, right, these people end up way over their head, and one of the other emotions, not anger, not rage, not whatever, okay, takes over, and these people end up folding like if you know what Japanese origami is, right? Okay, make little swans and you have frogs and all kinds of things as you fold these things, right? But have you ever seen an origami rock? Right? Origami rock looks like this. It's a rock, right? That's what they end up folding like, because they have no experience with it. They're overwhelmed by this other person's rage or the weapon or whatever the scenario is, and they're completely outside of their own wheelhouse. So it becomes a problem, right? Okay. So what I want to look at today during this session is something that I call emotion-based response, right? EDR for short. It's the basis of a program that I created a bunch of years ago, and it's actually at the heart of our module 1 or first module within our Warrior Concepts Black Belt program, right? Because we want to introduce this early, and we want to give students options based on this kind of thing, right? And so what we're going to be doing today to do that, to take a look at this stuff, is we'll be looking at 3 base feelings. Notice I didn't say emotions, okay? These things are a part of emotion, but they're very, very low. They're in the R complex or the reptilian brain and the lower mammalian functions, okay? So we're going to take a look at 3 feelings that we human beings move through, right? We're going to take a look at how they translate into emotions and how these emotions affect everything from how we think and process our experiences all the way to how they influence or the kind of influence they have over the quality and our ability or the ability that we have when it comes to moving, when it comes to being able to use our legs and operate and being able to get from point A to point B. Okay. Then what I want to do is I want to tie this into a principle within Bujinkan Ninjutsu that in training is designed to maximize a student's abilities and maximize the number of techniques that he or she has, right? Without having to spend however long, right, learning and memorizing and perfecting hundreds, right, of actual techniques or kata or whatever, right? Okay, so we're going to tie raw life, I guess, right, together with one of these training models, and if we don't understand it, it's going to kind of get away from us. So there's a lot of folks. If you're one of the folks who understands Bujinkan stuff or Genbukan, Jininkan, any of the cons, right, within that circle, and this kihon happo phrase is familiar, right? You may have run into this kihon happo principle, right? But we have to be careful, right? We have to be careful in the Bujinkan. We have to be careful in this context of training because this phrase, right, kihon happo, has at least 3 meanings, right? For a lot of people, it's a set of 8 techniques, generally known as the kihon happo, although more correctly in the Japanese language, if we have a list of 8 things, what we have is a kihon happan, right? A list of 8 fundamentals. But we have to understand how this stuff is written, right? So in the Gyoko school, where this concept comes from, there's also 8 areas of study, right? There's ganho, shuho, right? Study of the eyes and how they work and how they can be damaged or influenced, or how you can maximize the use of shuho, which also includes shu is hand, but it implies the arm, and how to best use it, how to maximize and get more power out of it, all that kind of stuff, how the arm and hand unit can be injured. Hoho, or known as sometimes known as sokoho no budo, or the martial arts of the legs. Same thing, right? Same application for the arms goes to the legs. All this stuff, all this kind of stuff, right? So there's 8 areas that way, but it's also a principle for how to run everything that we learn through as a way to get somewhere outside of learning and memorizing techniques. Okay, so we'll get to that later on as we go, but very quickly, before we do anything more, don't forget, like, share. If you're on the normal platforms, if you're over on YouTube watching, if you haven't already done so, click that subscribe button, hit the notification bell. That way, when new stuff like this comes up or any of the other videos that I put out, you'll get notified about these things. Okay. All right. So as a part of this upcoming Friday's training, right, the Friday virtual training, right there, the URL there. Okay. What we're going to be doing is taking a look at this emotional connection, right? And we're going to hone in on this now because, and you'll see by the time we get there, Friday's class, I'm not going to be able to do more than 1 or at best 2 techniques, but we're going to run it through a process to create variations and end up with 8 as many as 16 techniques out of those 2. Okay. All right. So again, before we start looking at all this, I think it's really important that we understand a kind of contradiction that goes on in the world of learning, especially something physical like martial arts, self-defense, that kind of thing, right? And what I'm talking about is this: the learning versus acting paradigms. Okay, so let's start here. Okay, so I've talked about body, mind. When we say spirit, often that means emotions, that kind of thing, right? So what we have is this learning versus acting paradigm, right? So both of these, right, would seem like everything is good, right? Um, but they're actually backwards from each other. How we act in the world on a day-to-day, moment-to-moment basis is backwards the way most people go through the learning curve, right? And here's what I mean. When we're learning something, right, especially the martial arts, okay, something is demonstrated, so we focus on learning that with our body, right? So we learn to do, right, step by step, this thing, kata, whatever, right? And then, as a part of that, right, we think about it, right? So what we're trying to do is understand why this move here, what's this doing to him, that kind of thing, right? This is where the tactics are, the strategies are, that kind of thing. And then based on what we're doing and our personality and our expectations and all that kind of stuff, right, we end up having a feeling about it. I like it, I don't like it, right? I have to learn it to get my belt or to get rank or to progress or whatever. So kind of neutral about it, right? But either way, and this goes with anything in our lives, right? Okay, we have to do the dishes, right? What are we thinking about while we're doing the dishes, right? And how do we feel about doing the dishes, right? Some people like it, some people don't like it, and some people are like, it needs to get done. So, okay, and other people are like, fuck it, man, that's why I bought a dishwasher. Well, you bought a dishwasher for one of a couple of reasons. One, to save time and effort. Two, to not have to worry or think about the dishes and a zoological experiment that's growing in your damn sink, right? And probably because you don't like doing dishes, okay? So, but this is the general learning curve, right? We do it, right? We mimic the teacher, we think about how it's appropriate, when it would be used, that kind of thing, right? And then a feeling pops out of it, right? And usually the feeling's tied to the amount of challenge or struggle or whatever, okay? But out in the world, contrary to what most people think, especially those who think that they are absolutely logical, rational creatures who happen to have feelings, it's not the way it works, okay? Science has proven this over and over and over again, okay? When we get an impulse that comes in, right, through one of our sense faculties, sight, hearing, smell, whatever, okay? We have a feeling, right? There's a sensation to that, right? But this feeling is not an emotion. See, so far I haven't mentioned happy, sad, depressed, whatever. I haven't mentioned any of those things because the feeling that we're talking about here is either I'm attracted to it, it's pleasant, I like it, I would like more of it, that kind of thing, or it's negative, right? I'm repulsed by it, makes me make faces, it turns me off, I want to get rid of it, I want to get away from it, that kind of thing, right? Or I'm just going to use a symbol here. I'm going to use a question mark. It doesn't mean that we're questioning it. I'm using this to represent neutral. Okay, so it's just there. Usually with these things in the world, things are coming into our sense receptors all the time, and those that are here, we barely take any notice to at all. Okay, or it'll shift to the other thing. But either way, okay, this person's coming up, fists are all balled up, and they're calling you names, poking at your chest, that kind of thing. There's a feeling that comes up, okay? Again, not happy, sad, anything like that. It's attraction, repulsion, neutral, okay? This is a big part of our Mikyo training and understanding how these things come about so that we can cut habit patterns and not always default to the same way of doing things, right? Okay. So we have a feeling, and then based on what we think is going on, what we think this person might do, or what their intentions are, or what the situation is, or what I might be able to do based on, we'll talk about some of the stuff later, my life condition, right? Am I out with my family? Am I alone? Am I whatever, right? Okay. So there's a whole bunch of factors that go into this thing. What I think I have skill set wise to be able to use, and then based on that, we go into action. Now, it happens way faster than I just described it. But can you see the problem? Okay. Do, think, feel. But in the world of the martial arts, right? I'll show this in two different ways here. But, well, let's just do this, right? So the learning paradigm, right? We can see this as the kata approach. Okay. We can bring this into play, but it's going to require more of what is known in Japanese as the waza approach. Okay. So, but what typically happens in the martial arts is the teacher helps us learn this stuff, and then the individual student, right? Put me in here, right? I'm left with this. Okay. We know that this happens because this feeling for every technique or skill set, rolling, leaping, hand-to-hand, kicking, ground fighting, whatever, right? The student tells on themselves. Whether they verbalize this feeling or not, we know when they like it. When they like it, they do it a lot. When they don't like it, they don't practice it hardly at all, if at all, right? And if it's neutral, well, see, it could be they just default back to thinking, which is, when am I ever going to need that? So yeah, no, that's not for me. Or I need it for my rank, so I don't have to like it or not like it. It's necessary. Okay. So, but there's a conflict going on in between the learning curve, the way most people learn, and the way we act in the world. Okay. So this leads people to believe that this is optional or it's just random. What I'm going to do during this class is show how it's a primary factor. It's an important variable or element in the self-defense paradigm, and if we don't get it, we could likely get it, if you know what I mean. Okay. All right, I have to change colors because that was just crapping out on me. So I'll use a different color. Let's go to this one. Okay. All right. So let's just keep moving through this, right? And so this is a core reality, right? So it's a foundation of how we process and experience our world, our experiences, our level of danger, that kind of thing. And think about that as well, right? With this positive, negative, neutral. Okay. So as we think about, well, you know what? Let's do this first. Let's take a look at the three emotional drivers. So if you're a student of mine or you're a student of any of the teachers that I might have learned from or other ones that are still using it, the emotional modes and whatnot, don't get confused because we'll talk about 4 on the floor. But when we're talking about these drivers, these raw, primitive level feelings, because it's what produces emotions is the feeling, and then we process it, right? Because we've been taught to put labels on certain feelings, right? And the way we think about things, okay? So there really are 4. There are 3 when it comes to a base primitive kind of thing, because they're right here, okay? But one of these we're going to split into two different ways that they might show up, okay? All right, so first one, right, is the neutral, okay? This could be neutral. It could also be just confident, right? Confident is not the same as arrogance. Confidence is not the same as stubbornness. Arrogance leans into strength and desire, okay? Stubbornness leans into resistance, right? They lean in different directions. Confidence is just, I'm here. I know, but that guy wants to punch you. he's going to miss. And even if he does hit me, what am I going to do? Bleed a little bit if he pops my lip or whatever, but I'm not worried about it. Okay? I'm not any more worried about him as I would be my 5-year-old grandson wanting to swing at me. Not that he's that kind of kid, but swinging at me, and I know I can just put my hand on his forehead and let him swing away. He can't reach me anyway. Okay? So very different. Okay? So this is just one of those, and yeah, but he wants to, and that's not the same as, oh yeah, you try it. Okay? This is this or this. Arrogance or stubbornness or whatever, arrogance starts to look like, okay? Stubbornness has a defensive quality to it, okay? I'm not moving because something will move you, okay? So this is the neutral. The next one, right, is aggressiveness. Okay, so aggressiveness, we have to be careful because aggressiveness, right, get in there first, okay, might not have anything to do with anger, might not have anything to do with aggression the way most people think of aggression, right? This, right, is I got to get in there, okay? So it confuses people a lot when I talk about aggressiveness or this getting in there, that it might be driven by fear. What I thought fear was like this negative thing. Now, fear can be a motivator. It can be an immobilizer, right? All of those things. But in this case, I need to get him first because if he touches me, I die. I need to go through this guy because the only door out of the room is on the other side of him, kind of thing, right? But either way, we're driven to get in there and go first, take the fight to him, or at least do something that you know, just allows us to bolt. Okay, so aggressiveness, right? So this is that attraction, right? You're okay? Somebody's calling you names, calling your mom names, and all that, and you just feel yourself. I'm gonna turn sideways so you can see this. So you can see this, right? And you just feel yourself kind of holding yourself back because your body, right, wants to reach out there. Okay, have you ever seen those coffee cups that have the word stress on them, and there's a little definition down there, right? It's the brain's tendency to override the body's desire to reach out, choke somebody, that kind of thing, right? So remember, these are drivers. They're not something you think about. It's a sensation that you feel. Okay? If you feel anything, then you're not here. Okay? Yeah, confident. That didn't sound confident. Okay? Aggressiveness. Okay? Your body, right? I either, because of a need or desire to tag this guy, right? There's that attraction, that kind of thing, or because fear and what's going on the inside tells me, like, I got to end this quickly because I got to go that way, right? Very different, right? And then we have defensiveness. Actually, I'm going to change that word, right? Let's call this, because this up here can be attraction, but again, see, when we use words, it can really throw people off because attraction, well, I thought that was like you liked them and like, you know, you want to be with them and all that. Okay? I don't have to like him to want to be one with him. Right? But my body it's like a magnetic force, right? Okay? So let's call this repulsion. Okay? We're still talking about defensiveness, right? I don't want any part of this mess. Okay? This shows up in two different ways. And this can be confusing to students when we talk about this stuff because they have a hard time discerning between these two types. Okay? So one is very, very closed off. It's this kind of thing. Okay? So the body and the brain, the core and everything is just trying to protect the life sustaining systems, right? So it's this kind of thing, right? So this is a higher degree of threat, and maybe the inability to move very far, right? Okay, so there's a lot of energy kind of pinning somebody down, right? So in that case, what we definitely have is a fending, not defending, fending, and this is closed. Okay. So again, somebody comes up, sneaks up behind you and stuff, and boom, right? And all of a sudden, the body, shoulders come up, the head drops, close off the neck, the limbs come up to cover, body blades a little or a lot, whatever. Okay, but you get this fending kind of thing, right? So I'm closing off and I'm trying to keep things from getting at me, not mentally. Okay, the stuff that we go through in the training, where we have this kind of thing, right? These things are higher level of this primitive stuff because the brain is involved, okay? But we have to have time, we have to have space, okay? So, and then the other one, right, is evasive. Okay, evasive, right? This one is open. Okay, right? Whoa, hey, I'm in trouble. Right? So the body's not closed off, right? But the body does back up. Whoa, okay? Or somebody gives you some shit during the day, whatever, man. Okay, and you're just getting out of there because you don't want to put up with that kind of crap. But again, I'm describing this stuff with words, and I'm describing things that are mental, but they're all driven, right, by the attraction, need to be one with this person, repulsion, want to get away from or avoid certain things, right? And the neutral, not bothered by it. It's not affecting me. Okay? So, again, a lot of people, when they're going through Mikyo and whatnot, they think enlightenment and all that kind of stuff is just being neutral about everything. It's not that it's not there. It's just easier to get there because these are natural responses to life, right? It's not like we don't have fun and we don't do things and get out there and whatever, right? But we're not attached to those things, so we don't have to, and we don't have to have the party go on forever, or we don't have to shut this negative thing down because it might be useful. Okay, kind of like getting an inoculation or whatever. Okay, nobody would ever think about having metal inserted into their body as being a good thing. Then we start talking about getting shots, or my wife has to get IV iron because of some things from years ago, and so her body doesn't process B vitamins, especially B12, and it doesn't process iron very well, right? So the meds that they prescribed, or these things to give her, they orally, they don't do anything, right? So she often has to, every couple of months, sit down, get an IV put in, and have this stuff pumped into her and whatnot. Or sometimes pull it out of a bottle and play darts with my wife, and right, get the stuff in there. But nobody would ever think about having a blade or a needle or some metal shaft shoved into their body as being a good thing. And that's where this kind of stuff rides in. But either way, right, we have these emotional drivers. This is really, really important. Okay, so where this turns into, like I said, emotions, is when the attraction, repulsion, or neutralness bumps into how we think about that person, the context that they're in our lives, kind of thing, right? Stranger, one way or the other; appearance, one way or the other. The way we kind of translate things, right? So it's different. It's where intellect, left brain, meets abstract right brain kind of stuff, and then we come up with these things, right? So, but the way I want you to think about emotions when it comes to self-defense training is emotions are part of our self-defense wiring. Okay, so what I mean by that, right, is that how we process and experience our world, our experiences, those kind of things, level of danger, okay, will determine our emotions. Okay, so if we're happy, there's no danger. Okay, we this has nothing to do with about recognizing it or anything, but we don't perceive anything like that. We don't perceive a threat or danger or anything, so we're happy, right? We could also be neutral, right? How you feeling? I'm here. Right? That's not negative. It's not positive. It's just a statement of fact. Okay. But if I'm happy, right, no danger. Right. If I'm concerned or I'm suspicious, those kind of an emotion, right, then there's the possibility for danger. I'm not sure. Right. And again, it might not be a physical attack. It might be emotional. It might be mental. They might be trying to whip a sales pitch on you, whatever. Okay. But if we're concerned or we're confused or, again, suspicious, that kind of thing, then there's the possibility of danger, right? And we sense this at our core, which is what makes us concerned or suspicious, that kind of thing, right? And then if we are angry, if we are afraid, if we are actively trying to get away from or negate a situation, shut it down, right? Anger often comes out of a sense of things are not going my way. People are not doing what I think is the right thing to do, right? So I get angry, right? Or somebody says something and I perceive it as a threat. So I get defensive. What do you mean by that? That kind of thing, right? So if we're angry, afraid, that kind of thing, then there is either imminent or present danger. Okay. So our emotional states, and if we're reading anybody else, their emotional state points to their perception of danger. Now, the kind of danger is actually based on how they've programmed themselves, because there is actual natural physical danger in the world, and the rest of it is either mental projection or trauma that keeps arising and things like that. Okay, so either way, right? So what the hell does this have to do with anything, right? Well, okay, let's bridge the gap here, okay? Because I'll save a piece here that I was going to add, but again, in the Gyokoryu, we've got this concept, which is it permeates all of the Bujinkan, this Kyonapo, but the principle is what comes out of this Gyoko school. Okay, the Kyonapo principle is not limited to 8 techniques. Okay, it's actually applied to any given technique. So kihon means foundational, fundamental. It does not mean basic, by the way. And if it does, if you're using the term basic, then it needs to mean foundation or a critical core piece that is necessary for success, right? And then we have models that kind of show how those things happen. Again, for those of you in the Bujinkan, in Ninjutsu, if you know this kata, Ichimonji no kata, right? Ichimonji no kata is one of the Kyonapo on the list that I would call the Kyonapan, right? But the Kyonapo, because people translate this as basic, and then this is, one of these 8 basics, they take Ichimonji no kata very lightly because, it's pretty cut and dry, man. I do this, and I do this, and things are over. Except that from this perspective, from this core idea, the Kyonapo is an ideal, right? It is a perfect technique that happens in a perfect moment. Right? He throws something, I neutralize it, break his balance, and kill him in one shot. Right? It's a kill technique. It's a one and done, very simple. He comes in, right? I make him miss, I neutralize, I break his balance, and then I kill him. Right? It's pretty simple. Okay. See, but not basic. Not the way most people think of. It's a beginner technique. No. Okay. It's not that way. Right? So they're all loaded with principles. But the Kyonapo principle itself, right? The way I normally teach it, which is why I have basic idea right here. The way I normally teach this to folks in the very, very beginning is that the Kyonapo principle is taking any kata, in this case, Ichimonji no kata, whatever, right? And what we're going to do is we're going to make 8 variations of that technique. We could do it many different ways. I'll get to there in a minute, okay? So for a lot of people, it's just substituting certain things. We'll substitute the strike or the fist for a different one. We'll substitute the angle of the attack or whatever. We'll substitute a punch for a kick or a kick for a grab, or we'll introduce weapons or whatever. But the technique itself, at this stage, probably looks pretty similar to the base kata, right? But we need to understand what is going on so that we can continue on. Because again, the base idea is to take any kata, create 8 variations, and then we're going to take each and every variation and make 8 variations of that one. And then we're going to take each and every one of those variations and make 8 variations of that, and then ad infinitum. Okay? The point is to get this thing that ego attaches to as this official thing to become just another variation on a principle that has to do more with tactics and strategies, right? Where we need this thing to end, where we need to result. Do I just need to knock this guy back and down so I can get the hell out? Or am I a cop? Do I need him face down on the trunk of a car or on the ground or whatever? It's easier to get him into cuffs that way. Do I need to get him into a lock or a restraint position? Do I need to get him out the door of my house or a window, whatever's closest, right? Okay. What's the agenda? Again, that stuff will go later. But what I want to do is I want to take a look at an upper intermediate to advanced perspective on this. It's still this stuff. It's always still this. But I want to look at 4. I'm going to borrow another one here. 4 different ways to look at the kihon principle based on elements or variables that I'm applying to make the change. Because here, right, at the beginning, right, again, normal beginner's lesson, okay? What I might be looking at here is the way I'm engaging with them, okay? So we'll call it technique engagement. What I mean by that is just what I said, right? Am I taking what the kata has, right? And so Ichimonji no kata, this thing comes in, I receive it, break his balance, I come in, pop that net, right? But what if I catch it, throw the arm away from me so it kind of whips him around this way, so when I deliver this strike, instead of hitting uko, I'm hitting, let's just go back here, chidome. No? Chidome? Yeah, blood stop, right? So it has a different effect on the body, but it still drives him into the ground. If I hit chidome, if I hit uko, I'm going to knock him sideways off his balance line. If I hit chidome, I'm going to drive him forward slightly off of his foot, so it's going to be harder for him to take uke, that kind of thing. Or it'll just knock his ass. Well, this is a kill shot. This is less of a kill shot, but we call it a channel changer because, he's watching an old action movie, and next thing you know, he's watching golf. That kind of thing, right? At least that's the way I watch golf. Anyway, so we're just doing substitutions, right? I might come in and come behind him and then scoop that head and pass him around, so now I'm behind him, kind of thing, right? So same basic model, but what am I doing to create this thing, okay? So I start looking at what most people see as henka. Okay? Henka means, generally speaking, variation. Okay? This is not to be confused with the slop and shit that people produce with bad taijutsu that they call it a henka, right? But it's something else. Okay? For something to be a true henka, it has to be using the same principles and concepts that the kata is teaching, so that it can keep this kata's name, right? It's not that the other thing is wrong. It's just not this if we're doing something completely different. Okay? Like if I'm taking somebody forward off their feet, right? Ura gyaku, ganseki nage, muso dori, uchigake, uchimata, that kind of thing, right? That's ura gyaku principle. Taking him forward, and I have to break his balance and control his body a certain way. If I'm taking him off his heels, mushadori, onikudaki, omote gyaku, osoto nage, rear hip throw, that kind of thing, then I'm doing omote gyaku principle. Okay, so ultimately, does it matter how you put somebody down? Yes, no, and depends. Right? If I'm just trying to survive and get the hell out, nope, doesn't matter. Okay. If I need him to end up in a certain place for more control, Or like when in my bodyguard days, right? Somebody comes in, goes to reach for the principal. That's the guy who writes my paycheck, not the head of the school. And I'm going to apply something to him, like an arm bar, or I'm going to catch a finger or something like that, so that his response moves him in a certain direction. I want to apply that thing. It's going to pass him off to the closest uniformed or secondary security individual. They can wrestle with him. They can get him out of there, because the amount of time that I'm away from paying attention to this person's safety, this hole's open. This side of the diamond is open. So I need to do it quickly, pass it off, and keep on moving. Okay. So in that case, absolutely does matter. If a police officer is trying to get somebody into a position where they can apply cuffs and this person's resisting, right? Their ability to apply things in a way that everything leads to that outcome, right? Their ability or not determines whether they can do it alone or they need 3 other cops to help, because violent people are really strong. That's not I'm not making fun of things. That's absolutely true. Just like 98-pound old ladies enraged and on meds in a hospital. Ask nurses how hard it is to pin these people down. Anyway, my ability to do that will determine whether this happens professionally and I don't need the help, or it gets caught on video and people are telling stories on social media platforms that here's another case of police brutality or something like that. Okay, so yeah, does it matter? Yes, no, and sometimes. Okay, or it depends. Okay, so we could come at it from technique engagement. Okay, we could come at it from let's do Chuck. Let's do environmental conditions. Okay, environmental conditions. Okay, so what I mean by environmental conditions is what's the ground surface like? Obstacles, barriers, right? Am I working at a corner? Am I between parked cars, right? Door to door? Am I between parked cars where I'm kind of in that plus sign that's created by 4 parked cars? Doesn't matter if it's the trunk or the grill or whatever, but am I in the middle of that intersection? Am I over to one side so there's limitations in one direction or another, right? How do I do this? Because in close quarters, the way I deliver Ichimoto no kata, I may have a hard time breaking his balance in a certain direction, because when I break it, he just pops up against a wall or a tree or something like that. And I don't mean hard. I mean, he stumbles back, and as soon as he makes contact, he catches himself and can push himself back off. And if he's not off balance and stumbling, then he can stop this one from coming and things like that, right? What else? Barriers, the amount of space that's available, that kind of thing, okay? So I can make variations based on different scenarios, right? Am I in the middle of a room, right? You know, the way most people train in the dojo, where there's no obstacles around or whatever, right? Am I in a living room, right? Am I in a living room where there's no coffee table around the things, right? Am I there with a coffee table? Am I there with, like in my house, dog toys and a 5-year-old's toys and whatnot? Because he was in the middle of playtime and it didn't get cleaned up, right? Dog stuff, well, you know, if they had an opposable thumb, I could make them clean stuff up as well, right? But where am I in the room, okay? If I am, let's say there's a chair here, entertainment system is here. I'm just making shit up. We've got a L, you know, one of these little sectional sofas or whatever, coffee table or whatever. Okay, this is all going to vary, right? What if I'm in this chair and just standing up when the attack comes? What if I'm here? What if did you get the idea? Okay, in Kotoryu, in the scroll listing the Kamai, but this is also a big part of Gyokoryu as well. This is called Kuraidori, being able to adjust around these things, right? So am I going to do the kata where I'm moving back at this 30 to 45 degree angle like the base model has, right? Or am I going to have to shift in that space and pop him? So I'm going to catch him and hit him at the same time, right? Okay, so there's how many different environments can I think about, right? Could I be out in the yard? Could I be at a park walking the dog and some jackwagon pulls crap and there's a tree behind him? beside him, behind me, whatever. Are there roots coming up out of the ground? Rocks? Am I at the playground with my 5-year-old? And so therefore there's shit all over the place, right? Seesaw, teeter-totters, whatever you want to call these things, right? Swings, whatever, okay? Yeah. So I could make it environmental. I can make it, I already talked about life condition, like being a cop or whatever, or, well, we'll do that. Let's do Chuck. Again, keep coming back to Chuck, right? Life condition, okay? Now what we have is intensity. Now what we have is laws and things like that might be in the way. Okay, there was a time in my life where I was a military cop. Right, I was a military policeman. Now, what most people don't understand is that a military policeman is only law enforcement when they're on duty. When they're off duty, they're a soldier just like everybody else. And when they're off duty, out of uniform, out on the street, while they're still a member of the military, they don't have any more rights than a civilian has, especially if they're dealing with civilian law enforcement, right? So life condition, okay? Let's say this is for my Leo guys, right? Because some of you guys, you may be able to relate to this or not, but let's just start with those three, okay? So am I law enforcement, right? A Leo, where I have to worry about use of force and departmental policy for how I can engage, when I can engage with somebody, right? Am I private security? Depending on the state or province or wherever you happen to be around the world, right? These people either have rights and benefits and all that kind of stuff, like a cop, or they have no more than a private citizen, or there's some kind of a hybrid thing going on in there, right? Or am I a civilian, right? Where I can pretty much do anything as long as I stay within the self-defense doctrine, okay? Or there's other ones, right? Am I a parent out with my child or grandchild? Am I a husband, in my case, right? Out with my wife, okay? Well, what makes a difference? Well, she can move farther and faster. My 5-year-old panicking is probably going to grab a hold of grandpa's leg, okay? Because he's terrified and I'm safety, okay? But there's a whole bunch of life conditions here. Am I at a funeral? Am I at a wedding? What? Okay, well, let me tell you that when you start injecting family members in, they can appreciate the fact that you're able to protect them. That could be very, very different when they actually watch you go into action and turn somebody's lights off. Okay? I know this. Many of my students know this. They have lost friends, they have lost family members or whatever in their action to protect somebody, not just getting into a stupid fight, okay? Because now that other person, for whatever reason, doesn't feel safe around them because they saw the monster poke its head out. Okay? Before, they felt safe because me or my students or whatever had those abilities. The knowledge made them feel confident and safe. But when they actually saw a part of me come out that they didn't want to believe that I had, that can change everything. Okay? Luckily in life, those people get replaced by other people who are attracted to that. And now my wife was on the other side. When we train, it's always for control and that kind of stuff. I mean, you can take things out, but when she comes in to watch class and it's a black belt class, she wants to watch the black belts beat the shit out of each other as we would do it on the street. She doesn't get it because she's seen fights. What she hasn't seen is sticking a thumb into an ocular socket. Just did that last week. I was grabbing skulls a lot through the eyeballs. Or not through the eyeballs, but into the ocular socket, moving the eyeball out of the way to put that kind of pressure on, because students need to feel what the attacker feels in those kind of situations. Okay? So, Sensei, you're so brutal. Well, sometimes, right? Not the people that I like and aren't trying to kill me. Right? Let's do one more. Could be the person's size and or fight style. Why am I putting both of those together? Right? It could be individual. I could work with size. or I could work with fight style, his, not mine, okay? Because the way he postures, right, the way he does things is going to determine which kama I start from, okay? But the size fight style relationship is just like personality type, including introvert, extrovert, and whatnot, and education or hobbies and interests. Certain personality types will gravitate toward certain things. Introverts will gravitate toward uh, university degrees or jobs or whatnot, where they don't have to deal with people a whole lot. Right? They can be in a cubicle, or they can be doing research or whatever. Extroverts are going to do the opposite. They're going to get involved in things that have direct human engagement because they're an extrovert. Okay. Same thing with fight style. Really big guy. Okay. Big, large frame, that kind of thing, right? I don't care if he's fat, tall, muscular, or whatever. He's going to gravitate toward wrestling kind of things, or at least things where he doesn't have to move a whole lot. He just has to wait till you get close enough so he can grab you and then just jack the crap out of you. Okay? He's going to gravitate toward fight styles like that. Okay? The issue is people that gravitate toward certain things think that they're right and best because their ego told them so, because it fits them. Okay? We have to be good enough at all these that we can match, right? So people who tend to be tactical, they're tricky, they're wiry, that kind of thing, will gravitate toward wrestling. I'll include judo, that kind of thing, right? Where they tend to be, just more about how do I, psych this guy out, catch him, trick him, that kind of thing, right? People that are more in your face or fearful and want to shut things down very, very quickly, or want to be the guy, whatever, right? They're going to be shifting toward karate, karate, boxing, kickboxing, those kind of things. People that are more precision driven, don't want to directly engage with somebody because they might be thinner, smaller, know that they're weaker than the average attacker and stuff like that, are going to gravitate toward Aikido or, tiny Nikes don't fail me now kind of thing, right? So how do I make variations, or how do I vary my technique based on these? Okay. What we're talking about during this one, right, is emotion. I should have saved one of those for emotion, but I got carried away. Emotional state. Okay. This, in this case, is mine. Based on this class, it's mine. But we could branch this one out and make it based on his emotional state, his relationship to me, life condition, right? Our personal relationship. I might be willing to hit the uko and do a disconnect on somebody on the street attacking me with a knife, but if it's drunk Uncle Bob at the family reunion, it's probably not going to go well if I do that. Okay, it might go better for you if you have a drunk Uncle Bob and you don't like him. Anyway, or nobody else likes him. It's not about how you like him, but the emotional state for mine, right? So in this case, when we're doing it, how do we feel when this thing's coming in, right? Are we not bothered, right? Confident, that kind of thing? Are we defensive, right? Do we find ourselves kind of, hey, calm down? This is different from, hey, man, calm down. This is different from this, right? When it's emotional driven. If we were doing a different class and we were doing psychology driven strategy, I might do this because I am trying to neutralize things, but if he comes in, it's a trap waiting for him because it looks like I'm unguarded, right? If I'm doing it from a psychological thing, I might go, and close off a whole bunch of things to force him to come in certain directions or to go after very limited things. Because what I'm doing is I'm reducing the possibilities and his options to 3 or less. Okay, so there's a whole bunch of ways to look at this kind of stuff, but in this case, we're doing the emotional drive. Okay, so again, these modes, right? Originally, I started off calling this 4 emotional drivers, but from a base level kind of thing, and from our Mikyo study and whatnot for you guys, there's only 3. Okay, so there's positive, there's negative, and there's neutral, right? So we've got neutral, we've got positive, and then we've got repulsion is negative. One's just more open or closed. Okay, so we have these things here. But for those of you who've been around for a while, right, and use the Godai system as a framework, right? Godai is a bunch of bullshit. It's an expedient to help people understand this stuff much faster. Okay, so this is what we call earth mode. This is what we call fire mode. All right. Then when we split these things down, the fending is what we call water mode, and the evasion open kind of thing is what we call wind mode. 4 modes of operation, 3 emotional drivers, that kind of thing, right? So what color did I not use? Black. Anyway, so I could come at this way, but if I come at it from the emotional state, when I'm making variations, when I'm going through the kihon happo principle, right? What I can do is, if I think about emotional states, right, then I can go earth, water, fire, wind. Shit, that's 4 of the 8 that I'm supposed to be making. Okay, then I could just do the punch, kick, substitution, whatever, right, in the process. Okay, or I could save it for somewhere out here. Okay, doesn't really matter. Okay, but the cool thing is that the more we understand that there are variables in any given situation, there are less in an organized sport or competition fight because there's rules that keep it within a certain box. But on the street, based on the attacker, the attacker's fight style, the life condition or limitations or restrictions that you have going on, right? The environment you're in, a whole bunch of other things, your emotional state, right? Are you in a fog today? Whatever, right? Okay. There should be no limit, right? And I challenge you, right? I gave you emotional state, technique, engagement, which is pretty much the base thing with substituting one thing for another, life condition, environment, size, fight style, that kind of thing. How many other ones can you think of? That would be variables, right? So are you seated? Are you standing, right? Are you, messing around with your kids and you're coming out of a roll? Whatever, right? What's the point? What position physically are you in when the attack starts, when the first thing flies at you, right? Could be mental state as well, okay? And do I see it happening and he's coming in, which is what all the kata as ideals imply, right? Otherwise, you wouldn't be fucking starting like this, or you wouldn't be starting like this, waiting for the attack to happen. Because one of those life conditions, not this same kind of life condition, but mental state, mental condition, right, is I'm in honeydew list mode, and I've got a list of things that she wanted me to pick up on my way home, right? She needs an unsweetened iced tea, and she might, I'm going to fill in the rest because unsweetened iced tea is the thing, right? So I'm in that mode, and I'm thinking about this, and all of a sudden I get clocked, and I don't go down, and I might get hit again. And so I need to recover from that because in that situation, he's already full born into this is a fight or an attack, and my brain has to catch up to, holy shit, I'm being attacked, okay? Because I'm going to start out from, what the hell was that? Why did that happen? And my brain has to catch up and get in there. So what conditions could I be in, right? Could I be in suspicion mode because he's doing something weird, right? Could it be an absolute surprise attack, right? Could it be he tried to do a surprise attack, but I caught him at that moment and I start backing up? And so am I standing still? Am I in motion, right? In which direction? Okay. Did I start off this way and it came in, so I need to button that up? Whatever, okay? So come up with a list. But what I wanted to do is I wanted to approach this from this emotional state because this Friday, during the virtual training, again, we're going to take one. I'm hoping to do 2, but we'll see. One, no more than 2 techniques, okay? And we're going to apply the kihon happo principle, but everybody's going to walk away with at least 8 versions of that technique. Now, I said 4 emotional states, right? But we have to be able to do them left and right sided. So that's another variable that you put in there, Okay, am I square on? Am I slightly angled? To what degree? Whatever. Okay, are there environmental limitations as far as which way I can move easily, which way I can't, that kind of stuff, right? So all this stuff, right? So again, just going back to the basic idea is we can apply any one of these things as a variation or as the reason, the element, or uh, the variable, right? For for the need to make the henka. And the cool thing about this is going to be really difficult in the beginning, coming up with 8 variations and applying these things. But once you get it, the more you do it, the easier it gets and the faster, right? Because we want to get to a point where this gets indoctrinated into mindset, where moving into any environment, any condition, any experience, you can do a quick psychological assessment of the problem, the options, and those kind of things, and be ready to go. And I mean 5 seconds or less, 2 to 3 seconds or less, okay? Because it just becomes the way you think, right? You become a living problem solver, okay? And then the cool side effect of that is that gets applied to everything in your life, right? My family members are, I tried this, and this, right? Can you do this thing, or how would this go? I can't figure it out. And there's a quick scan and click, and there you go. Or just do that, right? It's da, da, da. Well, aren't you the smart one? I wouldn't call myself smart. However, those functions and faculties came out of understanding how to apply these things. But this is very different from just learning technique and learning technique and then learning technique because it's official or it's whatever, okay? This is the place to start. Hatsumi Sensei's taught this for years. The kata is not the lesson. The kata is not the means to an end. The kata is simply a thing that shows you where to begin. That's it, okay? Everything grows out of that, okay? So again, hopefully I'll see you for the Friday virtual training. If not, we've got our Daikomyosai. Now, if you're listening to this way after January 10th, 11th, 12th of 2025, then ignore this all. But our annual Daikomyosai New Year's kickoff, yes, pun intended, seminar is coming up in just a couple of weeks. And the focus is on, this stuff will be in here because everything in the Togakure school is all about these things. Because if I ran all of this through what's known as the Tonko no Jutsu, okay? It's all about concealment, escape, guerrilla warfare tactics, that kind of thing. This was the secret of secrets within the Togakure school, right? There are 5 Goton Po, the Omote. There are 5 Ura Goton. There are 10 Tento Jupo that use elements for principles and concepts. Ran it through that, we'd have a shit ton. But you don't go through it academically, right? That's why we focus on principles and concepts, right? That's why the name of my academy is Warrior Concepts International. International is the tie-in with everybody else. But warrior, right? At what level? Concepts, principles, those kind of things. That's where the magic is. Because those the concepts and principles can appear how many different ways in the world? I don't know. How many different shapes of chairs or seats have you seen? Right? Beanbag chairs, the little rocker looking kind of things that they have for video game things, plastic lawn furniture, all kinds of things, right? How many different 3-legged stools, 4-legged stools, couches, chairs, love seats? How many different forms have you seen? But ultimately, they're all seats. That's the principle, right? Sitting, this object or item to allow me to sit, to get up easily, not to lie down, that takes more effort and energy, right? I'm in a state between one and the other, okay? But how many different ways do they show up? I don't know, and I'm not going to start counting now. Anyway, that's what I have. I hope I see you for Friday's class. If you go there now, you can get signed up, and we'll get you on the list, and you'll get your Zoom access information along the way. Okay, so that's what I have. I'll see you next time on Warriors Whiteboard Wednesday. Be safe, train hard.